So most of you remember it was March 7th. It was the morning, I think it was a Saturday morning. Community was still familiar with a recent incident that happened in mid-February after the 111 derailment. And the 111, I refer to the mile marker on the CN right of way. So this one happened at 88.7, just north of the village of Gogama. It was a southbound train, roughly 100 cars, and this is what we call a unit train. So nothing but oil. Okay, so it wasn't mixed goods, there's no box cars, it was just strictly oil tank cars, and that was all that was involved. Early in the morning, 35 cars went off the track on the southbound. So they struck the bridge on the Macamee River. I think it was 3 cars ended up in the river itself. The rest of them all sort of piled up on top of each other, right along the banks of the river, but on the north side. To date, I think they've removed roughly 40,000 tons of soil, and then roughly 3.5 million liters of water and oil. So it's roughly about 900,000 liters of oil they recovered. So to that 3.5 million that was involved in the derailment itself, nonetheless, there is the good chunk of the oil that was removed. That's going to be sent off for recycling. And then any of the water that was affected, they've collected that as well. And that's being sent down as far as Guelph for special treatment. We did a tour yesterday, and you can see a whole lot of construction activities going on. You can see what looks like metal sheeting along one of the shorelines. So the metal sheeting is still there. All the different government agencies, so we've had Gogama LSB, I've represented Matagami, and we've had the Sudbury District Health Unit, and Health Canada at times, Ministry of Environment, Natural Resources, Environment Canada, and then there's been others at different times. And so the idea is, led by CN, they have talked about what their plan is to do. When they present their idea of where they're going to sample or how they're going to do something, it sort of opens the floor up for sort of comment.
We all know that Matagami is, we don't have the expertise on hand or staff to be able to respond to these type of issues that happen in our territory. So one of the things that we did when the second derailment happened, and it being so close to Matagami, and the impact of which could have potentially come through had it been a lot more oil and more flow in the water, that we said we do need people who have the expertise in the background, because at the end of the day we have to be accountable to the people and make sure that the safety of our members, the environment, and also the waterways were taken care of. So the purpose of it was to inform members of what was happening on the derailment site and to gather concerns and get answers and questions from CN. So all the questions that you guys are asking today, this will be put into our thing that we send off to CN, and they will answer it and publicly post it, I believe, on their website.
So I'm working with Ryan and Jen and James and others, Jerry, on documenting how that how both derailments have impacted the lives of the people that are at Matagami. So a lot of people in this community are on Facebook, and that's how you get a lot of information. We hired Jerry to go to these briefings, which were happening initially 3 times a day. So at each one of those briefings, we were getting detailed information about what was happening on the site, and then we were getting a summary of that, and then that went up on Facebook. So if you wanted to be informed about what was going on a daily basis, that information was there. So, and we've also been doing community meetings. We've been doing a lot of community meetings right in Matagami, and we felt that we need to reach out to some folks that are really not preserved, and so that's why we're here today. So we'd love to get some feedback from you on this, and how you'd like to be involved going forward.
When I first heard of the derailment, I was at the house home, and I had some police and council come in my house and say there was another one. That's the word they use, and I had asked, "What do you mean another one?" Well, another train went off, and this time it's worse. And I was thinking, okay, what really happened? And it's quite upsetting to hear when we have a derailment, especially if it's oil contaminants going into our water. It was my first thoughts was, this is not good.
The morning I heard of the oil spill, because this isn't the first one. The first one blew me away, hearing about it, and then when I found out that this oil spill that happened, the second derailment, It really crushed me because, first of all, it was closer to home, and secondly, it went right in our waterway. Thirdly, the environmental damage that was being done, and I was scared, really scared.
Me personally, it was a big impact on environmental and the traditional land, the use of it. Like I said earlier, I used to hunt and fish there with my father back in the day, and not too long ago actually. But family-wise, now I have to find a different area to hunt in. I can't go back there no more. I don't want to go back there anymore.
Yeah, it kind of stunned me, I guess I would say, more stunned than anything, but because it had one prior, just about 3 weeks before that, a derailment up there, and they hadn't even cleaned that up yet. Before they could clean that one up, this other one happened, so I was thinking maybe more of those things will happen, you know. I don't worry immediately by myself. I worry long-term effects because I have grandchildren, children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. Hopefully, I'm not going to be here, but hopefully I can leave them a safe environment to live in. My concern is for the future, is not for immediately right now. Which kind of devastation are we doing?
The purpose of this one is to document the land use and understand the impacts of this in our territory. There was a confidentiality agreement, which was one of the very first things that we developed and sent out, because the initial conversations that Caroline was having with some of the people was that they didn't want to share the info because they didn't want it to be public knowledge. The first few interviews with the knowledge holders did take place. We do realize that more does need to happen, and there will be more taking place with the Firelight Group. So there will be a number of people that will be sought to be participating in that. And we want it to be people who have knowledge of the land to participate in that, because that's valuable information that we need, and it will go into a document that belongs to the First Nation.
We worked with the Firelight Group to put together a proposal, James and myself, and we have that proposal now. We have it in front of CN. We're hoping that they're going to approve that work plan. It's a fairly significant one because it covers not only just the Gogamo rail derailment, but it also covers the other derailment site. Because one of the things we don't want this to do is sit on the shelf, be an academic study that isn't useful to inform the restoration planning or the monitoring that's going forward. We want this to be something that is useful to CN, but we also want it to be meaningful to the community as well, and keep, so that you guys keep that information, and that, you know, that mapping and that information gets held with the First Nation for the long term.
The type of oil is important to understand, because when we look at oil spills, we think of the oil spills that are in the news. I mean, if you look at the news right now, there's one in California. People are familiar with the big Kalamazoo incident that happened in Michigan about 4 or 5 years ago. And that was a pipeline incident, but those are the ones that pop into people's minds when they hear about these oil spills. But it's important to keep in mind that every time we have an incident like this, A, they're very different just from the way they happen, but B, the oil itself can be very different and can react very differently. So in this case, what we had is a synthetic crude oil. It was pretty cold when it happened. So there's approximately 22 inches of ice on the river. So the fact that we had a large oil spill, we had a significant fire. The fire was actually a bit of a godsend that it occurred. While it looks nasty, there's a big plume of smoke, it gets dispersed over a large area, it's much easier to manage that than it is to see 3.5 million liters of oil, which was technically involved in the incident, all get dumped into the river. Okay? The ice was also a very good, it's almost a silver lining. Because it was so thick, it was able to contain a lot of the oil at the site. And so it provided CN the time to respond and to put what is similar to these, we call these booms. This is sort of a sorbent boom, so oil sticks to it. And then we have things like hard boom, which are more just meant to hold it and contain it in one location so we can go and we can collect it. But that delay, those conditions, allowed CN to install those hard booms at different locations down the river in their effort to prevent it from getting anywhere into the lake.
Even when it was first announced on the national, they made it sound like it was a trivial thing oh, this spill happened in a wooded area far away. And I was appalled. Oh, it's in a remote wilderness. No, I'm thinking, we're people, this is our homelands, and it's just down the road. And our animals live there that we know, and yet the media tends to downplay. And then once they start to realize the gravity of what really transpired, then they jumped on it, because now it was a headline story.
We don't even have information as to what really happened yet to date. And I would like to know what happened, what was the cause of it. And we have some First Nation members that live right in Gogama, you know, and seeing their posts on Facebook, that was very alarming, and seeing that black plume going into the air like that, and heaven only knows how high it really went up when it first happened. And then seeing Facebook posts shared from an individual that was there when it happened, and there was nobody there. So when you look at that time span from the time that clip was posted, it was quite a time lapse there for when it happened to the initial response.
One of the things that we've heard time and time again from this community is that there's a lack of trust in the information, the environmental information that's coming from CN or from government agencies, and that there needs to be long-term monitoring of the environment, whether it's the fish, eating fish, and maybe that hurts you, or you're gathering plants, or you're hunting, so that you understand how this derailment could impact you, not just today, but in the longer term. So one of the things we've been working with CN is to train, and there's 2 people who are in training. So we have you guys and Jordan.
And we also have another Matagami member as well, Tina.
We also, I said, it's not good enough just to train them. We need to make sure that they're on a crew and they're actually working and monitoring the environment on behalf of Matagami longer term. So we do have a commitment to hire these guys to do the monitoring with them, to help with the restoration work that's going to go on. So you guys are going to be really important to this community in the future, because you're going to be the ones that are on site experiencing this and being able to share information with yourself, with other people in the community.
Every day I used to go out to the community center in Gogama, so I talked to the environmental people. There was a lot of updates, information even here in the community, bulletin boards, the band office complex. There was CN posted a lot of information, and it was really lots of information to take in.
Like there yesterday, when we asked a question, they couldn't give us a yes or no answer on would you drink the water. To me, it was a simple answer of yes, I could drink the water, or no, I can't drink that water. I wouldn't drink it. That's what's going to happen with this derailment. They're going to give you the theory and what they perceive to see and what they see at this time, but there's going to be lots of things they don't see yet that's going to occur, that this is going to affect it in the future.
There is a component of oil, so even though we say oil and water don't mix, they don't generally mix, but there are components or different ingredients in there that like to dissolve into the water. So you can see the 3 images there, 3 lake images, and they've got all these little boxes all over it. And I can sit down with you and explain what they mean. But generally what that is it's day 7, day 33, 34, and 51, 52. Those are sample periods. So CN has hired a consultant like myself, and they're going out there and they were collecting water samples from not only on the river at different locations, so drilling holes through the river ice and on the lake ice. And again, like 20 something inches of ice, going down and grabbing a sample of that water and then analyzing it. They were looking for all the potential chemicals that might have been in the oil that may have dissolved and gone into the lake water. Okay, so on the day 7, all those little yellow highlights in those boxes, those are numbers where they're not good numbers. So they did exceed. But then as you see in day 33, 34, there might be 1 or 2, I think mostly up near the derailment site. And then of course day 51, 52, we're not really seeing any more exceedances. okay, which is a pretty common thing when we're dealing with these oil spills. As we continue to remove oil from the source, less and less has the ability to get into the water column, okay? And there's also natural processes in the lake, in the river. Once the ice started to break away, some of it will start to evaporate, and then some of it just breaks down naturally in the environment. In addition to the water samples that were collected, they've taken samples of the sediment, so the river bottom, the lake bottom. They've done what they call an ethics study, which is looking at the little animals and critters that live in the sediments themselves to see if they've been impacted. And they've also done a significant fish sampling. We don't feel that that's a complete assessment of the fish data, so we're still going to be pushing for some additional samplings down the road so that we get a full picture of if there were fish perhaps didn't get affected at that point, perhaps they got affected later on after the sample period. So we want to make sure that we have a full understanding of what the potential impact is.
Perhaps their length of their car shouldn't be so long. I get calls from people that have worked for CN, and they tell me things, people I don't know that have worked there many years. And they also talk about lack of having enough workers on the tracks to properly maintain it, to look for faults. He called it section men, where they could look at the tracks to inspect it, see what's going on. Why are there more derailments if they say, oh, everything is going so good in terms of working with all these modern technology, and yet we're having these derailments not only in our area but across Canada, Saskatchewan.
The landscape, everything's totally changed. Where I used to go look at those plants, they're not there no more. They're gone. It's barren land right now. Like I said, you know, I would look in our traditional territory here, the types of plants, what's good for us, that good life. It's been disrupted.
When you're talking about the soil, where does the soil and that all go like
Okay, yeah, where does the
So
soil go?
the soil that was contaminated, that could not be cleaned up on site, so what they did, they've stockpiled it or put it in a big pile, and now they're moving it by truck, and it's going to a registered landfill. So it's not going to be used in sort of a natural environment anymore.
And they've removed the oil as much as possible from the sand.
They created a pit, they put plastic on the bottom of the pit, and then they put the soil in it. And the idea was that if any liquid oil was still in it, it would drip to the bottom, and they created a sort of a sump, like a house sump almost. And they can vacuum that material out. So that's an ongoing process. And then as it rains on the soil, it kind of washes it a little bit, and then again pulls more oil out, and they keep extracting that oily water. And then that all goes off for special treatment. It's considered a non-hazardous material. So yeah, it's contaminated, but for landfill purposes, it's still ideal. And in areas where we need to bring soil back into as a replacement, we're finding, and through the various organizations, CN is looking for an adequate supply of soil that would be reasonable to put back in that location.
You know, we should really be documenting before people forget how they felt, how this has impacted them, not only physically potentially, but also mentally. So we put together a fairly extensive survey of things like, you know, are you healthy? What did you experience during that time when the fire was like? How do you eat the fish? Do you eat the plants? How often? When?
What are you worried about? One of the things that came forward at an elder session was the fact that one elder said, yeah, the fish might appear okay right now, but who's to say in a year or 2 or 3 what's going to happen to the life of those fish, and if people are consuming it, what could potentially happen? And those are unknowns, really. And we hope that nothing bad will happen, but that's where you have to be informed first and foremost. And then you make your own decision. And so long as we're providing that information to you, you're making as an informed of a decision as you can about the wildlife, the fish, the berries.
Being on site every day, working with these people, and I myself, my job, I find the process was, done right, yeah. I've seen it from the beginning, from the first day I started working there and then up to date today. I find a big difference on site, and I see it every day, and I see the results every day. And vegetation is returning back there, animals are returning back to the site.
I think they have to take more ownership and what they do is not always about commodities and making the mighty dollar. Because I'm afraid if it should happen again, which I don't doubt, it's going to happen. And Matagami is situated in a place where we have a lot of forest. It could be very dry season. And if that should happen again, what's going to happen to our community here in Matagami? Is CN going to look after us?
I was hurt by the fact that they were like trying to sugarcoat like it was a small spill. You know, it's like any spill shouldn't happen. Like that was a huge spill to me. You know how many hundreds of thousands of gallons went in? And how many they talked about extracting? When they said that they had extracted at least 90% or more, you know, that doesn't sit well with me. When I was on site, and how much is too much, they asked me, and I says 1 drop in that water is too much.
Well, we're all consumers of that product. Everybody, one way it touches everybody. Something's never going to change. But CN should monitor the rail system a little more, especially in the spring thaw, anytime they actually. And if they were to monitor the rail system, the lines are a little more in depth. More monitoring's got to be done about it, you know, protect their land and the way of life and for the Aboriginal people, and the general public in general.
Well, they can spend more money on containers that are carrying these oils to contain it better. When it does spill, it won't spill. Like you think all those steel, they make the how you call it, rail cars, mile and a quarter, mile and a half. Long time ago, you didn't see anything any more than 3/4 mile, maybe, and it was running on the same rail yet. Okay, but it was also cut off, and they didn't carry the heat or like right through. But now they're designing it so that they have less maintenance, they think, and they become complacent, and they put more and more, and then they load it as much as they can till something happens.
We have to do our bit as First Nations too to get on board to help not contaminate the air, the water. So I think it's going to change significantly in the future, because we will have learned from our past mistakes, and yet they have a demand for oil, and I hope in the future that it changes so we don't have to rely on those fossil fuels. I think we have to learn how to tap into those resources that are out there, because clean fuel can make a big difference in climate change. Sometimes I don't even like to think about it, what's happening around Turtle Island, the pollution. It's a way of life that's ever so gradually changing.